Happy Friday, folks. Hope you're doing well. Lately, this week, it's been a lot of humming and hawing, a lot of when it comes to negotiations with the United States along the tariff situation. Because as you said, we talked about at the beginning of the week, July 21st was that original deadline. Mark Carney says, we're going to get a deal done. Then the July 22nd was emergency meetings with the premier because of the August 1st deadline that Trump came in with, saying 35% tariffs is coming in, whether you like it or not. That's the deal. That's the contract, unless we can get something done. And then you hear through the grapevine, you hear murmurings through the media that really the issue is that Donald Trump wants to break open the dairy industry here in Canada, and Mark Carney is not willing to do that. Or at least I should say the Quebec cartel has a gun to Mark Carney's head saying, you're not going to be doing that. That is what's happening. And so some things got exposed today. Some half-truths, some deception, some misdirection by Mark Carney and this liberal government of what's actually been going on with these negotiations. And Donald Trump comes on his end and says what he's been seeing from his perspective. And it is quite honestly very interesting, on top of the crazy stuff Doug Ford is proposing in Ontario and so much more. And we're going to be getting into all of it. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. You get any value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. Helps us to grow, helps us to get to not new audiences, and as well gives people another option that is different from the mainstream media. Now let's get into our first story, shall we? And it was a doozy. It was a doozy. Mr. Donald Trump giving his perspective on what has been going on with these tariff negotiations, because as what we've heard from Mark Carney is that we're getting close to a deal. We're getting close to a deal. We're having good conversations. Conversations are positive. It's all good. We're building towards. And we've been hearing that since April. And now here we are, July, about to enter August, with the fifth, sixth deadline proposal through this whole process. Nothing has even come close. Many other countries have come to deals. Canada has yet to come to one. And Donald Trump was asked about it today, and this should tell you everything that's been going on. This should give you an inkling. Sure, it might be a negotiation tactic, but this should give you a bit of an idea from the American perspective of what is actually happening with these negotiations on their end.
And we will have most of our deals finished. August 1st is going to come, and we will have most of our deals finished, if not all. We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs, not really a negotiation. We're working very diligently with Europe, the EU, which covers a lot of territory, a lot of countries, and that's the big one right now. We have the confines of a deal with China. We haven't really. We don't have a deal with Canada. We haven't been focused on it. When the letters go out, they're a page and a half. That means they have a deal, it's done, they pay that tariff, and that is a contract, essentially. And they can come into the country, they're going to pay a tariff. I'm going to keep it minimal, I'm going to keep it, I'm not looking to hurt countries. I could do that too, but I'm not looking to do that. But when that letter goes out, that's it.
So you heard it there. Donald Trump saying, negotiations with Canada aren't going too well. They're essentially at a standstill from his perspective. And we're hearing that from different people who are around these negotiations. We keep hearing from Mark Carney's mouth that things are going well. They're progressing. We aren't getting close to a deal yet, but we'll get there. So we're hearing from two of the heads of states in this contract negotiation when it comes to tariffs. Both have their different way of communicating, but both have communicated the same thing. These talks are virtually dead in the water. There's not a whole lot going on there. It is a whole lot of bluster from a political perspective, but both are kind of have admitted that it's gone nowhere. And we'll probably just have to settle on 35% tariffs on whatever it is, 15% of the goods, 4 or 5 major sectors here in Canada will have tariffs placed on them. I guess I'll concede that this is the elbows up approach. We are not going to give up our dairy. We are not going to be giving up our poultry. We're not going to be giving up on steel and aluminum. We're not going to be giving up on softwood lumber. We will just have to deal with tariffs being placed on us. And again, keep in mind, we aren't the ones who pay those tariffs. However, those tariffs are placed on manufacturers in the United States who want to import those Canadian goods, and they will have to pay an increased price for them, discouraging them from wanting to pull from Canada and instead looking to find American solutions instead. That's where all that goes. And so the fact that we're not going to have 100% free trade negotiation. The fact that even Mark Carney's admitted that, you know what, we're going to have tariffs placed on us by the United States and we're going to have to live with it. The fact that 85% of our goods are going to be tariff free. It's about, 15%, 10 to 15% that is going to have tariffs placed on them. And it's going to hit some of our harder sectors, though. It's going to hit the steel and aluminum, things like that. So we'll see where this all goes. It's going to be incumbent upon the Canadian population, especially those who voted for this Liberal government, to make sure they keep buying Canadian as they promised they would do. But the problem is we don't have as big of a market. We don't have as big of an economy as the United States does. So this is actually, these tariffs, even though it's only a small portion of all the goods we trade with the United States, it's on very important industries here in this country, which has to be figured out. So the fact that we have Mark Carney at this point, who's all but resigned to the fact that we're going to have tariffs placed on us by the United States, the fact that Donald Trump has come out today and said that negotiations with Canada aren't really going anywhere. So it looks like August 1st, that will be the deal. And that's what we're going to go with. And American senators came up to Ottawa this past week, and they are even talking about saying, hey, we appreciate you giving in on the DST, the digital sales tax. However, it's not actually gone. And even the fact that the American senators have caught on to the games that Carney plays when it comes to these things, they are holding his feet to the fire on it.
That's number one. Two other points that I'd mentioned that I think would help to build trust. We talked about the digital services tax. You all, to your credit, said you're not going to collect it. I asked that Canada move as quickly as possible to get a law passed in Parliament, making sure that it's gone permanently. The Prime Minister was receptive to that. He said he would get on it in the fall. So I think that's number one. Number two, in our part of the world, softwood lumber is enormously important. And we asked about how we could make progress on dealing with that issue, which has been an irritant between the United States and Canada for decades and decades. And I think we now have a clear idea of how to proceed, and that's to build around some sort of quota arrangement. And the Prime Minister said he was open to that. So lots to work on, but it's all about strengthening the trust between our two great countries. Senator Murkowski.
And so you have it there, where the irritants are softwood lumber. The fact that DST isn't fully taken care of. He acknowledged it, the fact that Mark Carney said, we're just not going to collect it, and they've stopped collecting it. But he sees the fact that, but there's no bill that was scrapped the DST. There's no bill that was passed that said that you're not going to collect it. You didn't scrap any bills. You just said, we're not going to collect it, and you haven't collected it, but now we have to just trust your word on it? No, we want something passed in Parliament now. And the fact that senators like, okay, I guess we'll have to wait till the fall. Fair enough. If these negotiations are so important, the fact we want to get the negotiations figured out by August 1st, Parliament needs to be convened now in order to get these things passed, in order to scrap some of these bills, in order to actually have some true negotiations going on and actually take care of business. These are things they have to do in order to make good on some of these conversations and negotiations that are happening around the table. And the fact that even the American senators come up here from Oregon saying softwood lumber is a huge issue. We need to get that figured out. But number two, we're not fooled by what Mark Carney's done with this DST. We want to see that gone immediately. He says it'll be in the fall. Fine. I'd rather it be sooner, but he better get it done in the fall, is where that tone is going when it comes to these negotiations. However, if getting a deal was so important to Mark Carney here, he wouldn't be waiting to the fall. He would convene Parliament and try to scrap these bills that are causing such irritants for our American neighbors in these negotiations. But it's okay, because Minister LeBlanc said, don't worry, Mark Carney's got us. Just trust him.
On trade negotiations with the United States, Dominic LeBlanc is in Washington, D.C. today, meeting with American senators in ongoing efforts to try and reach a trade deal and stop this trade war that President Trump launched against Canada when he was back in the Oval Office. LeBlanc saying these are complex negotiations driven by the two countries' equally complex relationship. Listen to this.
There is no comparator with other countries in terms of the way the trading and security relationship between our countries has evolved. That's why these are complicated conversations. But Canadians expect us to take the time necessary to get the best deal we can in the interest of Canadian workers. So we're only going to be in a position to accept a deal when the Prime Minister decides that it's the best deal we can get in the interest of Canadian workers and the Canadian economy.
What an interesting statement, isn't it? We will get a deal when the Prime Minister says it's good enough and it's in the best interest of Canadians. However, there hasn't been a whole lot that's been done that has shown that he has the best interest of Canadians at heart. He has the best interest of the likes of Brookfield. He has the best interest of the likes of the companies he's been involved with. The fact that he had the blind trust and now he can't work with any of the, like, well over 500 companies without excusing himself from the room these days. We'll see if that actually happens. We just got to trust him. Screw the term liberal. Screw the term conservative. Anytime a government comes in and tells you, just trust us, you should be doing the exact opposite. No, we're not going to just trust you. When Mark Carney says it's a good deal, that's when it's a good deal. What? That's the reasoning he just gave us here. If Mark Carney says it's a good deal, then it'll be a good deal. And he'll tell us when he deems that so. Mark Carney's admitted that we're likely going to have a tariff relationship with the United States. Donald Trump says negotiations with Canada aren't really going anywhere, so August 1st is probably going to be the deal that's going to come through. You have a senator that's come up saying, hey, scrap the DST, and we got to figure out stuff on softwood lumber. Then you have Mr. LeBlanc coming out saying, don't worry, Mark Carney's got our backs. When he thinks it's a good deal, that's when it'll be a good deal. Until then, buckle up. These are the people you've given negotiation powers over to when it comes to one of the biggest deal negotiations in our country's history. Maximum impact on the Americans with minimum impact on Canadians was the promise during the campaign. Mark Carney said about reciprocal tariffs, which went away very quickly. They're going to have maximum impact on the Americans, have minimum impact on Canadians. Well, it turns out, as I said, over 85% of our goods are tariff-free. But the industries that are very core to our country are the ones that are going to have tariffs placed on them. And do you know what's going to happen with those core industries when those tariffs are applied on them permanently? You're going to see a lot more headlines like this. Algoma Steel seeks up to $600 million from Ottawa in emergency trade war relief. Algoma Steel Chief Executive Michael Garcia says the Canadian steelmaker is in discussions with Ottawa to try to secure a financing package worth more than $500 million as financial pressures mount during trade war with the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump in March imposed 25% tariffs on global imports of steel into the U.S. He doubled the tariff to 50% last month, which essentially closed the American market entirely to Canadian steelmakers. Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that a tariff-free trade deal between Canada and the U.S. isn't realistic and signaled that the timing of any pact is up in the air. Algoma Steel, based in Sault Ste. Marie, has outsized exposure to the tariffs owing to its single Ontario plant relying heavily on the U.S. market. Before the trade war began, Algoma sold roughly 60% of its output to the U.S. Mr. Garcia, in an interview on Wednesday, said the company is in talks with the federal government and hopes to secure between a $400 and $600 million deal in loans to help keep it afloat over the medium term. The package could also eventually see the government purchase an equity stake in Algoma. So a $400 to $600 million aid package as a loan, they say, is in talks right now between Algoma Steel and the Canadian government due to these tariff situations. And you caught that in the last part of that article. There's talks, instead of it being a loan, that the Canadian government owns an equity stake in this company, which again is not unheard of. You have the likes of the Canadian pension funds and things like that are invested in companies like this, who have bought ETFs or bought directly into companies to have a stake in them in terms of getting a return. But a $400-600 million deal is quite a bit of money, because Algoma Steel does about $2.3 billion a year in revenue. And they're asking for roughly 21% of that revenue in loan relief, in emergency trade war relief. So how much of equity are they willing to give up to the Canadian government in order to get this money? That is something I'm keeping a very close eye on, because that actually is a little bit concerning to me. If a government has to start assuming large swaths of their companies in their country, you tell me what that looks like. I'm genuinely curious. I don't know if that's a precedent I want to see set here, but the current economic climate is allowing for this to happen. So where do we go from here? Because we know that Ontario is desperate these days. We heard from Doug Ford yesterday that he wants to just start giving work permits to asylum seekers in Ontario. Brian Lilly did an opinion piece on this in the Toronto Sun, explaining why this is a bad idea. He says last year, more than 90,000 people made asylum claims in Ontario, and it seems Premier Doug Ford wants that number to go up. That will be the result, intended or not, of Ford's declaration that he wants to have the province start handing out work permits to asylum seekers. Ford made the comments at the close of the meetings he and the other premiers held this week in Huntsville. We will be issuing our own work permits. We aren't going to sit around and wait for the federal government, Ford said. At a time of high unemployment, it seems puzzling that Ford would be pushing for more workers in the system, but that's exactly what he's doing. And the unintended consequence will be to encourage more people to come to Canada illegally and declare asylum. Ford says his government will use Section 195 of the Constitution Act to grant work permits. His reasoning, according to his staff, is that the federal government is allowing large numbers of people to come into the country this way. They are ending up on social assistance and costing the system money when they could be working. Ford's riding of Etobicoke North is home to one of the hotels that houses many asylum seekers, and he's heard from several that they would rather be working. His position is understandable from a compassionate point of view and from the perspective of letting them work rather than being a drain on the system. It's a horrible idea from the perspective of that it will do to our system. Ontario's unemployment rate currently stands at 7.8%. That's well above the national average of 6.9%. Youth unemployment stands at 15.8% and 50.8%, and many of the jobs that the asylum seekers would be able to get with a work permit would be the same entry-level jobs that young people would be seeking. Regionally, Toronto's unemployment rate stands at 9.6%, Oshawa at 9.7%, Kingston at 8.4%, Hamilton at 8.1%, and Windsor at a staggering 12.3%. Into this, Ford wants to unleash more than 100,000 people who have sought asylum over the past few years and have yet to be granted work permits. How about he puts pressure on the federal government to fix their broken system? And that, my friends, I would agree with. The idea of, hey, we need people to work. Let's just get these people to work and just give them work permits, even though there's no jobs for them to have. That seems like a great idea. Huh? What are we doing here? And I agree with Brian Lilly here. How about we just put pressure on the government to fix the broken system of immigration so we can catch up to the amount of people that we have with their jobs, hospitals, you name it, rather than just saying, hey, let's just give even more people work permits and have even more people competing for more jobs, thus continuing to depress wages in this country. Sounds like a great idea. Doug Ford, Liberal Premier over here. That's his big thought. That's his big thought. Very fascinating. We'll put that there for now, and we'll end off on a bit of a brighter note. You know, one of my favorite politicians in this country is Mayor Brad West of Port Coquitlam, BC. He was a little fired up this week. He posted a pretty pointed post about Canada's legal system and how it's so messed up. And he called it out exactly for what it was, and God love him for it. Mayor Brad West, Mayor of Port Coquitlam. One of the most remarkable things I've observed during my time in elected office is how easily our weak-ass legal system gets manipulated and exploited by those causing unbelievable harm to this country. From corporate crime to the most depraved, unforgivable acts. Is there a more lenient place on earth to get away with it than Canada? My friends, this is an elected official calling Canada's legal system a weak-ass legal system. I've done a few pieces on him. He, as I said, there's a reason why he's one of my favorite politicians, because he calls it for what it is. He's an unbelievably compassionate man. He's also an unbelievably driven man. He will tell you exactly what he's thinking and what he wants to see happen. And he's been so vocal and so on the ground in his community with dealing with the triad groups from China that these groups from the United Front have threatened him and his family. So he's not just playing politician. He's in it with us. And he sees it for what it is, and he thinks it's absolutely BS what's going on. And I love that he takes time to call it out and also tries to work hard against it to make sure it works for his constituents. It only makes sense. But obviously this has been a wild week for legal proceedings. From the Hockey Canada case to the convoy case to many others where people are just getting away with full-on murdering people in this country and only getting a slap on the wrist for it. So this was quite the week to post something like this. That no matter where you stand, left or right, everyone hates the legal system these days in Canada, and they don't think it makes sense. And he's putting words to a lot of people's thoughts. God bless him for it. And we'll finish off with this, though. Donald Trump and Jerome Powell getting into it on camera over numbers.
It looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
I noticed that at about 3.1 as well.
3.1.
3.2.
This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added.
entire capital plan.
Yeah, you just added in a third building is what that is. That's a third building,
Well,
including
no,
the
but
Martin building.
it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's
So,
not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cost overruns?
Don't expect them.
First comment, Zachary Grover. This literally looks like a scene from The Office. And he's not wrong. I agree with that 100%. It does feel like a scene from The Office. Donald Trump's going through a building that was being built for the Federal Reserve. And Jerome Powell and him are going through it, going over the costs, talking, making sure the progress is going well. And then he's like, yeah, it's been 3.1 billion. He's like, whoa, 3.1 billion. What are you talking about? This has been, whatever he thinks the amount is. And Donald Trump is talking about the overall project and how long it's taken up to this point and how much it's cost. And Jerome Powell's like, that's not what I was taking in my calculations. And it was just funny to see that tension happen on camera yet again, because these two really don't like each other. Trump has threatened to fire him. He's also just going to let his contract run out here in a handful of months. So we'll see where this all goes. But that was just a funny way to end off this beautiful, amazing Friday. Because guess what? As much as politics are crazy, things are kind of psychotic, don't you ever forget that it is July 25th on a beautiful Friday afternoon, and Happy Gilmore 2 is now on Netflix. But anyways, enjoy your Friday. Have a great weekend. I'm out.